The bull had the Frisbee in his mouth, Karen was screaming in a pitch only dogs could hear, and I was sipping lemonade on the porch thinking, seriously, should I be charging admission? If you'd asked me a week earlier whether my pasture would ever be the front line in a suburban turf war, I'd have shrugged, laughed, and gone back to fixing the barn roof. Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec. My name's Jake Colton. I run a working ranch, I love my land, and apparently I also own a bull with a grudge against plastic. It started on a Sunday morning that smelled like cut hay and promise, the kind of day where everything feels salvageable. I was halfway through a second cup of coffee when I noticed 5 SUVs parked along my fence line, all the same beige, like a herd of metallic buffalo had decided to graze in my driveway. The north gate was open and I had not opened it, not even a creak. I walked down the gravel path, boots crunching, preparing a speech that began with "you're trespassing" and ended with "I'll press charges," and honestly I was ready for confrontation. What I found, though, was something that fried the part of my brain responsible for processing normal human behavior. There, in the middle of my alfalfa, was Karen Whitmore, HOA president, self-appointed queen of suburban order, twirling like it was her backyard and she'd invited the whole cul-de-sac. She launched a bright yellow Frisbee across my field and called out, "Come on, Sharon, run for it." A woman in pink sneakers chased after it like she was auditioning for an ad about organic yogurt. I stood there, jaw tightening, and said the thing you say when you want to be both polite and terrifying. "You're trespassing." Karen turned, all charm and varnish, and said with absolute conviction, "Oh, Jake, we just needed some open space. You barely use this part anyway." Let me be clear, that part of my pasture is where my livestock feed and sleep. My animals move through there, and my fences are posted. Open space is not an invitation to parachute your yoga class into somebody else's livelihood. I told her so. She smiled, the kind of smile that had won a few petty battles and a lot of garden club applause, and said, "The HOA allows shared access to non-commercial green space." I said, "I'm not in the HOA." She blinked like that was a new plot twist and then dropped the classic line, "You're adjacent, that's basically the same thing." No, Karen. Being adjacent doesn't entitle you to my hay bales. Her crew looked like a flash mob gone wrong, sun hats, water bottles, matching activewear, all grown adults pretending my pasture was a public park. I had options, call the sheriff, install more cameras, or, and yes, here's where it gets cinematic, I could open the southern gate and let Buster handle crowd control. Buster's no ordinary bull. Raised from a calf, smart as a fox, stubborn as a mule, and he hated Frisbees, don't ask why, he just did. I walked back to the house like I was losing my mind, and quietly pulled up the live feed on my phone. Morning came and they returned louder, brasher. Karen lobbed another Frisbee into the air, a bright, offensive yellow, and I opened the southern gate. Buster didn't charge like a maniac. He sauntered with the deliberation of a heavyweight entering a ring. When that disc dropped, he moved. Women scattered, yoga mats flew, Karen screamed something that sounded like a siren tuned to panic, and Buster, God bless him, scooped the Frisbee like a dog grabbing a bone and trotted off to chew it under the old oak. No one was hurt, except maybe Karen's dignity, and when the dust settled, the field was empty save for an abandoned water bottle monogrammed with AK. Naturally, the clip went viral because people love livestock versus entitlement. Someone in the HOA had filmed the whole thing, posted it with dramatic music in slow motion, and by sunset, Frisbee Bull was trending in 3 states. My phone buzzed like a hornet's nest. Karen stormed up my driveway later, face red and hair frizzy, pointing and accusing me of setting her up. I leaned on the porch post, sipped lemonade like a saint, and said, plain as the sky, "You wandered into a bull field and then were surprised when the bull acted like a bull." She tried legal maneuvers next, letters classifying Buster as a roaming hazard, demands I keep him leashed during daylight hours, install an 8-foot privacy fence so the HOA wouldn't have to witness livestock doing livestock things. I framed that ridiculous missive and tacked it in the barn bathroom for future entertainment. The neighborhood split. Half thought it was hilarious and started calling Karen the Frisbee Whisperer. Half were older souls who'd always suspected the farm next door would be a problem. Petitions were passed around. People at HOA meetings waved maps and clipboards like torches. Karen, emboldened, arranged a community unity Frisbee festival, positioned deliberately on her border. Maximum visibility, minimum common sense. Here's the twist, and I love twists. An unexpected ally showed up when I least expected it. Leslie Hart, a county zoning inspector I went to high school with. Leslie was tough, The kind who grew up in 4-H and once punched a guy for mocking her prize goat. And when she showed up to inspect, after Karen filed a zoning complaint, everything shifted. Karen tried to paint the incident as a rampage, but Leslie watched the footage, checked the fences, and closed the complaint within 15 minutes. "This looks like a personal vendetta disguised as public safety," she told Karen, with all the calm of someone shutting down nonsense before her lunch break. That was a pivot, having a county official who knew the land, knew the rules, and wasn't having it change the tenor of the fight. Karen doubled down anyway, then tried to leverage the court system. Civil complaints about reckless endangerment and emotional distress, ridiculous claims about misuse of livestock that read like satire. My cousin Dave, part-time lawyer, full-time conspiracy enjoyer, loved the theatrics and filed a motion to dismiss that read like an exorcism of bogus claims. He dug up HOA meeting posts where Karen bragged about her Frisbee initiatives, and I piled up camera footage, timestamps, and neighbor testimonies like building a legal fortress. But the conflict finally moved from farce to serious when someone decided fire was a solution. My generator shed caught flame in the dead of night, and the main camera had been cut. Thank God I'd been paranoid enough to plant backup IR cameras in owl boxes. The footage showed masked figures, one of whom forgot gloves and left a telltale tattoo. Preston Weller, chair of Karen's disciplinary committee, showed up in the frames. Another was Randy Coulter, Karen's cousin. Preston's arrest on felony arson was the moment the room stopped laughing and started paying attention. Evidence is oxygen. Once it was on the table, the county opened investigations, and the HOA's little empire began to leak. Madison was another unexpected player, a woman in her 30s who used to be close with Karen and stepped forward with a thumb drive of HOA meetings where Karen discussed making him touch us, i.e., staging incidents to force compliance. That video was damning. The prosecutor got on it. Subpoenas flew. Karen's hubris, which had been a weapon, turned into rope around her neck. The community began to talk openly. Neighbors came forward with stories of forged notices, late-night inspections, and fines for nonsense. A class action formed, and the HOA's board started to look very small. Courtroom drama is its own animal, exhibits, videos, emails, depositions, and frankly, it was satisfying to watch. Preston took a deal and testified, Randy folded. Karen's emails showed she'd planned a campaign of pressure, and had even discussed purchasing adjacent land to, quote, write it off as blight if I walked. The judge didn't blink, barred verdicts, injunctions, asset freezes. Karen was removed from her position, the HOA was dissolved, and my parcel was reclassified, so no future clipboard tyrant could stake a claim on my pastures. After the dust settled, something gentler took root. People who'd never shared a fence line pulled chairs up in my yard, brought pies, dropped off apples for Buster, and for a while the only drama was whether the county fair pie contest favored cherry or apple. I used part of the settlement to rebuild the shed, beef up security, because you don't get complacent after being targeted, and I planted an extra row of apple trees. I also registered Buster on social media because the internet demanded it, and yes, he now has a fan page where people send him cowboy hats. Ridiculous but joyful. Victory usually doesn't arrive with confetti. It trickles in as quiet mornings and fewer angry letters, as neighbors who can actually hear the wind again without activist playlists overlaying it. One afternoon I stood with Buster by the fence, watched Karen walk past without a clipboard, and felt something like relief. Not because she was gone entirely, but because she'd been called out and the community, for once, chose common sense over fear. So here's the scene that makes me smile. A barbecue on the ranch, kids running around, Buster trotting after a beaten Frisbee like a goofy dog, neighbors trading recipes and gossip, and even Karen, once removed, showing up with a plate of ribs and slipping away quietly when it's clear the pasture is no longer contestable. That was the victory, messy, human, a little absurd, but real. Now I'll leave you with a question that keeps me up sometimes. Who gets to define community? Is it the folks with clipboards, bylaws, and developer ties, or is it the people who live the mess, the barking dogs, the crooked fences, the ragged garden beds? Drop your story in the comments if you've ever been bullied by the rules, or if you sided with your neighbor and helped save a slice of sanity. Tell me what justice looked like for you. If this made you grin, share it with someone who needs to know sometimes the best defense is a bull, a camera, and a little common sense. And don't forget to hit like if you think homeowners deserve real protections, not passive-aggressive postcards.